Think back to your favorite book that you've read, maybe fiction book that you've read as an adult, or even back to your favorite childhood book, like Little Red Riding Hood. There's something compelling that keeps you reading because you want to find out what happens. And that's exactly the type of energy you want to bring in to your business presentation.
Hey, it's Nikki Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it.
Hey, it's Nikki back on Gut Plus Science. So, the show, Gut Plus Science, the science side is really around data, right? And more of that nerdy side of things mixed with so many of us, like everyone on this show, that really shares the heart and the emotion for the work. So, today's topic is right in alignment. I'm so excited to learn. Data is everywhere: dashboards, KPIs, surveys, metrics on top of metrics. And we need those, right? But the real question is for all of us to reflect on: how often do those numbers actually move us, move the people to action? So today's leaders, they're not short on data, but I think short on clarity and focus to put that data in action the right way. And this episode is going to be focused on closing that gap. So I'm joined by Kaitlin Henze. She's a leader who helps organizations to turn raw numbers into narratives that drive understanding, alignment, and then help us with the real change that we want to see. Kaitlin sits at the intersection of data, visualization, and human behavior, and she's passionate about helping leaders stop reporting data and start communicating it. Today, we're going to talk about why data overload is holding so many teams back, how to simplify and visualize those insights. Most people, we're like, it's visual, I need to see it, right? Same thing with data. And how storytelling is a missing link between the insights and the data and the actual impact to make the differences. So let's get into it. Kaitlin, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. I want to kind of give this baseline understanding of, data is everywhere, like we just said, more and more data. But in reality, across the landscape, what's the effectiveness rate of how these numbers actually move the needle and move people forward? Thanks, Nikki. To answer that question, I will share something that we have found at Storytelling with Data when working with leaders and teams across various different industries and professions. And that is that many times in a business setting, someone wants to communicate findings of some sort of study or project and inspire people to do something with that. However, often what happens is that people leave the meeting and cannot remember exactly what was talked about and don't feel motivated to make any sort of change. Change is really hard. And in order to feel motivated to do something differently, we have to have a really compelling reason why. And the reason why most of those business presentations fall flat is because the visuals, the way that we display and show the data, are convoluted and take far too much cognitive load to actually understand and grasp. And the way in which it's communicated is frankly boring, confusing, dry. And we all have limited attention spans. So people tune out when visuals are complicated and the presentation or the way that it's communicated is not clear and compelling. And that's what results in no action being taken and change not being driven within an organization. So we find that it's pretty rare that on the first go around, teams that present data and present a required action or a recommended action actually are able to go through with that because their audience doesn't fully get on board or even understand what they want to do. So good. I can't remember which guest this was, but I remember learning this and it's always stuck with me. And I think you're right in this wheelhouse. I'm going to go deep on this today. Just a great reminder. So many times in an organization, we want our people to go out and represent the company in a way that's not this verbatim message, unless it's maybe like the mission statement or whatever. We want them to go out and carry the message as their own, to be like an ambassador for the brand as a team member. And when we have these big, long, stats and numbers that show what we do and the impact of that, it's so hard to remember that on the fly, right? Oh, I think it was 67 and whatever. But when you tell it in a story form, that story is able to be taken by somebody else and kind of made their own with the same core message.
Yes.
Right. And I remember someone sharing that on here, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so good. Because the more that someone takes it and makes it their own, staying true to the core message, then it's theirs. And you can feel that emotion and passion with it. So I'm sure you're going to go all into that. But I remember learning that and I've adopted it. So I love to get to the deepest why behind the work we do. Tell us more about that before we keep going. Like your true, like inner, like this is what fires me up and why I do what I do.
Yes, the reason why I was so drawn to storytelling with data long before I even started working here, when I was first introduced to Cole and read her original book, Storytelling with Data, is because I am someone that cares deeply about community impact. I have always wanted to make a difference in the work that I am doing. And in our human society, most people are driven to make some sort of change or take action by logic. We might feel initially motivated by the heart and the emotionality of it, but ultimately to do something big, whether it's approving a budget, adding additional resources in a business sense, or fundraising, grant writing, allocating dollars, or even protesting, standing up for some cause, we're motivated to do that when the brain understands the perceived benefits or the risks of not taking some sort of action. And data can help significantly with that. However, the challenge, as I mentioned, is that a lot of the ways in which data is visualized and communicated is not in a way that our human brain can actually understand and know what to do with that. So our mission statement and our why is to make a community impact and to drive effective change through data storytelling.
I love that. And I know we're going to talk about this somewhere in here, but there's a cause connected to this that what do you call that? Like a give back, a pay it forward, make the next generations better type thing. Can you give a little insight on that and then we'll probably tap into it more.
Sure. So the area of the business that I primarily work on is on our elementary education side. So Cole has written a variety of books, one of which that was published in September of 2024 is called Daphne Draws Data. The reason this book is a little bit unique compared to the other 5 books she's published is that Daphne is geared towards kids, kindergarten through 5th grade children. And our goal with that is to grow the next generation of data minded leaders. The pace at which we are consuming data is rapidly increasing, and the amount of data that kids take in and consume on a daily basis now is so much more than when you and I were children due to AI, social media, and just having like instant access to everything. So, our goal with Daphne and with the free programs that we run for kids is to teach kids how to collect data from the world around them, take that in and visually represent it in a fun and colorful way using markers and crayons and blocks and magnets and stickers, and then tell a story with that to their peers, analyze the data, and use that to understand the world around them, understand the differences among their communities, and then maybe make some sort of effective change. So I really enjoy working on the elementary education side because not only do I get to help teach this skill to kids, I get to help teach this data storytelling and visualization skill to educators, both teachers and non traditional educators that work in after school programs, tutoring centers, libraries, even parents. And that is what I think will be incredibly powerful as we move forward, because we're having that dual role with influencing the adults who influence our kids and also influencing the children that will grow up to be the future leaders of our country and organization directly.
I love that. So, listeners, if you're like, I want my kid to get involved with this, I think there's a way that we're gonna link back to here in just a little bit. So stick with us. It's such a cool focus for contribution in your business. Is so needed. So, okay, let's get into this. I feel like I meet at least two, if not 10 new people each week that have a data solution. There's data solutions popping up everywhere. And like we said in the intro, it's very needed. Like we need data to run our business. But I think it's this overload problem. So we talked about like which ones and how to use it and all that. Give us the lay of the land on what is contributing to the growing overload problem.
So, a couple things. One would be AI. As I mentioned, we have instant access to anything that we need, whether it's AI or just Googling something or asking people. We can get a large amount of data on a very easy basis day to day. So, that overload and overwhelm makes it really difficult for people to actually pull apart what's important and even determine what's accurate versus what might not be real data. So, the importance of being able to show and represent data in a very clear and simple visual and then pair that with story is to be able to simplify it down for an audience of humans, which I fall into this category myself, are constantly overwhelmed by the amount of inputs that we're getting in. So if we make things very simple for people, then we make it much easier for them to understand and then know what to do with that.
Hmm. So, there's all kinds of types of people out there, and we use assessments for awareness to better understand ourselves and others and our strengths and everything. So, some of us can naturally see because we know the vision and we really understand business and things like that. We're like, we naturally can get focused easier. But I don't think the majority of people have that natural strengths. We all have our natural strengths, right? How do you help someone that's like, okay, what I heard you just say is, yes, it's coming in everywhere. There's a new platform and all these different inputs. And it's most important to stay focused on what is most important for you, the leader, the team, right? How do you help them do that?
So at Storytelling with Data, one of our primary worksheets or activities that we do with people in either our public workshops or our custom client engagements is called the Big Idea. And the Big Idea worksheet challenges the presenter of the data to come up with a single simple sentence that represents their call to action, what they want the audience to do or what they want the audience to know about the data that they're presenting. And it goes through a variety of different steps, but really what it comes down to is intimately knowing your audience before you design your data presentation, understanding what matters to them, understanding the benefits if they take said action, the risks if they do not take an action, and then structuring the presentation, both the visuals, whether it's slides or a document or an email, along with the words that you use in a way that will lock that audience in, keep their attention captivated, and then ultimately get them to take that action that you want. So, spending time to understand the audience is really the first step in preparing for any sort of data driven presentation or communication.
Mm. Oh, I love this so much. I'm gonna take that big idea concept. We've got a team meeting tomorrow where lots of us are getting together live and everybody else remote. But that's such a fun exercise. Like at this stage in the business, like just to see everybody's, and kind of just play with that a little bit. We have most of our 2026 plan all, buttoned up. It'll change as we go, but I wonder what could, help us kind of shift that. So I love that so much. Let's dig into, the whole idea of seeing the data, this visual clarity. And I wanted to say too, Simon Sinek's start with why. So just a couple minutes ago, I honed in on your why. I wanted to hear that fire and I want other people to know that. Sometimes in business, the who trumps the why. right? And then we can kind of come backwards and kind of knowing when to do that. We do that a lot of our strategic planning. So because, we talked earlier, there's so many different types of people, different assessments and give these and understanding who are you talking to? Who are you trying to create this visual representation to is I think lock that in. Like for our listeners right now, it is so, so important because then it really makes sense to them and it matters to them. That's key, right? So, with that, now that we've got all those things in place, talk about this. How do we get better at visualizing the data?
Yes. So there's kind of two steps in presenting the data once you understand your audience and have been able to map out and drill down to what you want them to do. The first piece to that I recommend, and Cole will say this as well, is to get really scrappy, put your computer and PowerPoint away, get out a pen and paper or some sticky notes, and create a storyboard. So that allows you to get all your ideas down and then structure them in that story way, thinking about the introduction, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the resolution. Map all the different structures and pieces of the story and of your presentation together into a way that flows based on what you know for your audience and have that in a low tech, lo fi sort of format. So that way, when you go in and start creating the slides or creating the document that you'll share, you have that idea and that structure in mind, which makes it much easier to then put things into some sort of technology to present. So that's the kind of the first step that I recommend when you're thinking about visualizing. The second piece, once you do get things actually in a tool, is to think about how you can draw the audience's attention in a way that locks them into exactly what you want them to see on the screen and take out any distractions or extra noise that might confuse them or take them away from what the actual message is. And this is actually a lot more simple than people might think. It includes things like removing borders and grid lines, using highlights or different colors to pull out certain data points, even taking a big circle and drawing a circle around the data point that people want or that you want people to see. So, any sort of different tips that you can do to really remove the distractions and then focus the audience's attention on the piece that you actually want them to comprehend. But before you do all of that, get rid of the computer and really take some time to map it out in a more old fashioned pen and paper way. So you can see this is how I want the story to fit together. And this is how I think it will appeal best to the audience.
Is anyone else feeling like energized to just like go do this right now? Like I feel it's like get away from the screen, get away from the noise and like go use like fun, paper and colored stickies and just like let the creativity flow. I was
Yes.
just talking with a client a few minutes ago. She was driving back from her last big engagement for the year and she had 5 hours in the car. And she said, as much as I don't like this 5 hours in the car, I realize how valuable it is for me because I have no distractions and I'm like sitting here solving and whatever. And I'm like, we cannot underestimate the power of that,
Yes.
right? It's really something like just encouraging step away and get away from the screen and just go and brainstorm and let your mind like many times we have the solution right here. We just are cluttered, you know? And it's a lot of fun to do that.
Yes, yes, and we go back to getting rid of the noise and the overwhelm. That helps with that as well, and it really allows you to think through. All right, what are the different components that I want to add into the presentation? And as you start putting it into that narrative story arc, you might realize some of these elements aren't necessary, and the audience doesn't actually need to know this. Maybe I'll put it in an appendix and then you also start to realize, oh, there's actually gaps that I need to learn a little bit more about, or some questions that I might want to ask. And I will test that with some of my peers or talk to others around me who know the audience well and see what else I might need to incorporate into the final presentation.
So good. Okay, now let's venture into the story that we bring to life, this storytelling piece. Because I mean, this is the core. This is the name of your company, right? Like storytelling and data are in the name of the brand. So we've started to share, the power of a story versus a laundry list of bullets. We've laid that out. Let's go beyond that now and help us understand more about what does it really mean when we are telling the story with the data deeper than what we've already shared to give more of this context?
Yes. So if you think about the last business presentation or webinar or, public seminar that you sat through, it's likely that it happened in a very linear fashion. Someone introduced the topic and talked about this is what we did and this is why we did it. And then they might talk in a decent sized chunk in the middle about all their findings. And the reason people do that, presenters do that, is because they spent so much time preparing and gathering the data and looking at all the insights and analyzing the results. And they think, I need to tell my audience everything and give them all the different things that I learned about this. And I've done that myself in previous roles. And then they wrap up with some sort of conclusion or call to action. Now that we know this, we think that this is the best path forward. And typically with those style of presentations, that really linear path, people get lost in the middle. They start to zone out or tune out and they miss the actual call to action at the end. So the reason why the storytelling component is so important is because it keeps the audience engaged and captivated throughout the presentation. So if you think back to your favorite book that you've read, maybe fiction book that you've read as an adult, or even back to your favorite childhood book, like Little Red Riding Hood, there's something compelling that keeps you reading because you want to find out what happens. And that's exactly the type of energy you want to bring in to your business presentation. So rather than thinking about things in a linear path, think about things in a narrative arc. We have lots of great blogs and some podcast episodes on storytellingwithdata.com that talk through how you think through introducing the plot, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then finally the resolution in a way that keeps people on the edge of their chair and gets them to want to keep listening.
That's so good. Okay. Can I put you on the spot to
Sure.
give us an example of a story presentation versus the lengthy, meaty, data packed PowerPoint and just what that kind of sounds like? And again, I want to hone in for a second because you said something I think is so important. Okay, actually, a couple of things that come together. When we know the audience and who we're speaking to with how we are going to present to them, that is so important. But across the board, all people want to be like captivated. Of course, some people are like more, like nerdy than others with like the data stuff and everything. And rightly so, that person that's presenting it, it's so exciting to them because they've done all this project and found out all these things, right? And not to overlook that, but we want that person to get the greatest impact from all the work that they've done. And then maybe send all the numbers and follow up, right? Let's send, the report later. So to kind of bring this together with, rather than me hopping into a meeting and I'm like, did you guys get the link? All right, slide number one. And here we go through it. Like, what does that look like on the other side?
So I'll give you an example since you mentioned that. There was a school district that we worked with that wanted to secure funding for a summer math program for kids. Math is oftentimes viewed as boring or confusing, and kids don't enjoy math. And so they did a pilot for the summer math program one year and surveyed kids prior to the program and asked their sentiment about math. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Or are you somewhere in between? You think it's okay, or maybe you're kind of curious about it. A lot of the kids prior to the program felt that they hated math or that it was too hard for them. They did the summer program, found really creative and unique ways to teach kids about math. And then at the end, surveyed the kids and found that a significant portion of the kids shifted from hating or despising or thinking math was boring to kind of liking math or being really excited about it. And so, with that data, the school wanted to help advocate for funding and resources to continue to run this program. So they used the data and showed it in graph form as far as the survey results before and after, but they also weaved in some very targeted individual stories about how kids' learning transformed. So with the anonymized, names, they told stories of certain kids who really struggled and were falling behind in their math classes or weren't completing their homework. And after how they went through this program, they were much more engaged. They turned their homework in on time, their test scores improved. And so coupling those two together made for a really powerful story and then a call to action at the end that made the audience say, yes, I do want to support this summer math program because I want my child and all the children in this district to increase their math skills and capabilities, not only for right now to increase the testing scores across our district, but because this will help them flourish as adults long term.
That's so cool. I love it. Okay, so Kaitlin, I feel like we've given so much here and you've given great examples, and most people are probably like, oh, I resonate. Yep. If only that person, that was presenting for 2 hours yesterday would have had this advice. So it's so, so good. And I know there's a ton to learn on your website. You've got resources for days rooted in data and stories. So go check that out. But let's talk about practical application tips, like some of the best practices that your clients like that these listeners can take and go try. Give us one or two or three of those.
So, a fun exercise, or I think could be a fun exercise, is to go back to the last presentation or document that you created that had some sort of chart or graph, look at it with fresh eyes, and ask yourself, what is actually necessary here and what could I eliminate? Another step towards that is to bring it to someone who has never seen it before and say, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, see if you can figure out what this means. And with that, you can then start to decide, what can I eliminate? What's clutter? What's extra? What's distracting from the actual message to make my visual more compelling and clear and obvious to people? So that's step number one as far as the visualize piece. And then for the verbalizing, the actual communication component, one practice that I like to do, aside from, knowing your audience, that's another big tip that we talked about. But a good practice is to test it with people before you actually have your presentation. Could be coworkers, family members, friends. Walk through the presentation with someone who has no background on the data and see how they are kept engaged and tell what kind of questions they ask, gather their type of feedback and perspectives. And that just helps give you a little bit more insight to refine your presentation and think about it from a different lens before you actually present. So those would be my two tips that you can do to practice today. And then if you want to see a couple of other side-by-side comparisons, I think everyone likes a good makeover. Yeah, this was the chart that we had before, and then here's how we transformed it. Cole and two of our colleagues, Mike and Alex, wrote a book that was published earlier this year in September of 2025 called Before and After, which has tons of anonymized client examples of how we helped them transform their data presentations into real compelling stories and narratives with strong visuals. And I think that's a really fun way to learn because you'll see yourself in many of them. Be like, well, I made that mistake or I've done that before. And then once you see it, it's really hard to unsee and you can kind of track your progress that way. This is a good
I
resource for
love
you.
that. So good. Yes. Okay, so let's talk again about how listeners who heard what you said about, your heart for helping the younger generations understand data early on, those next steps and what's available, like can they join from anywhere? Doesn't matter what city, are they chapters? Like, is it online? Tell us all the things.
So the first step is you can visit daphnedrawsdata.com. Daphne Draws Data is the children's book, again, geared towards kindergarten through about fifth graders. So go to daphnedrawsdata.com. We have tons of different learning activities, videos, different graphing resources to teach kids or maybe the adults in your life that want to start at a more colorful and fun realm of data learning. And then with that, if you do feel really passionate about teaching these critical thinking and problem solving skills to kids, I would invite people to join our Data Detectives program. It's free to join, and we are asking leaders in different organizations to help spread our impact worldwide. So our programs can remain free. We have volunteers take the materials that I've built for our Daphne Draws Data programs and use those to do a 30 to 40-minute program with kids in their community. It's super easy and simple. Everything's already set up for you. You go in, you read the book, you do a graphing activity with kids. I help you along every step of the way. And then once you do that, you'll get a fun prize with some access to exclusive content in the Storytelling with Data library to help enhance and reinforce your own skills. Yeah, so check out Daphne. She's a fun pink dragon.
Oh, awesome. I want to look this up actually. I know I've been on the storytelling with data .com website, and it's just loaded with so many awesome resources, guides. You even have like the community discussion components. There's so much there. So if this is speaking to your soul, and if it's not speaking to your soul, it should, because we all need to really lean in and understand this. It's really important today, with just like we talked about, all these inputs, all this stuff coming at us, and how to filter. So storytelling with data to navigate through all of those resources for us bigger people at work, right? And then for the younger ones, starting with daphnedrawsdata.com, navigating around there, and that will lead you to, if you want to take the next steps with the Data Detectives program, you can get there
Yes,
from
exactly.
Daphne Draws
Yep,
Data. Okay,
yep. All of it
awesome.
is on both websites, and we'll put it in the show notes too, and so people can have easy access.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I've learned so much today. I am inspired to go whip out my markers and crayons and paper and things, and have a lot of fun with these tips. Let's dig into our little lightning round here. We call it lightning round because it's just real fast answers. But we want to get to know you outside of what we've talked about here. So, Kaitlin, we've asked for 8 years, and your answer here will be added to our growing resource. What is your favorite book of all time, or a favorite recent read that you want to add onto our recommended reading list?
I have so many favorite books, both in the fiction and nonfiction category. But I'd say a recent one in the past couple of years that I really enjoyed was The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. All of his books I've loved. I've read all of them and just really enjoy him as a person. But his newest book, The Life Impossible, was a really fun and feel good fiction read.
Oh, cool. Thank you for that. I'm not familiar with him or that book, so I'll go look it up. New to me. Yay. So you love cooking, but you use no recipes. I love that because I do too. I'm always like, how do I take what I have left here? I haven't got my next grocery run, or pick up things that are on sale. And sometimes like it's a white, like something I've never seen. I'm like, what do I do with it? So we share this. But now I'm so curious to know, what is the most innovative recipe that like you just were like, we're gonna give it a shot, and it was super good? And I also want to know like something recent or regular that you kind of use. So give us a little insight.
So a recent thing that I tried, because I happen to have a lot of peanut butter, I'm like, what can I make with peanut butter? Because I don't really love like eating just peanut butter regularly, and I don't do a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I'm like, oh, there's some like cool like African peanut stews that I've had at different restaurants. So I concocted a stew with some tomatoes, some broth, a bunch of vegetables, chickpeas, and then added a decent amount of peanut butter and then toasted some peanuts and put it on top, put it over rice. It had some curry powder in it. It was very, very good. I
Could
was
you
a
send me the recipe?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm
Kidding,
a
huh?
little bummed that I didn't like write down what I did because I'm like, I would totally make this again. But who knows? Maybe I'll concoct it and it will be slightly different, but just
Yeah,
as delicious.
that's
So
so cool.
yeah, that was a recent thing. And then something that I do pretty frequently is just a lot of different bowl concoctions with different flavors. So I'll find a grain that's on sale or go to the market and find some unusual grain. I just discovered buckwheat groats. that I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. I'll try this. And then pair that with a variety of vegetables, usually whatever's on sale or fresh or seasonal, and then make some sort of creative sauce. And it always ends up being super flavorful and yummy and unique. So that's a fun one. That's a good weeknight staple at my house.
I love that. Do you ever cook with like in bowls to put the base of farro?
Yes, I love that. I love farro.
Me
It's a
too.
delicious grain.
That's a new one for me, and I just feel like it's so substantive. You know, it's really good for, when you make it in advance and you break it down into like lunch items, like,
Yes.
and you don't have to have very much. It's really great. And it's newer to me. Yeah. Okay. So we like to talk dreams and bucket lists around here. And you said something about you have one on the list, but it's in action, I think next year. Southeast Asia. Where, why? Tell us more.
Yeah, I've never been to Asia at all. I have always wanted to go, and I have had a recent growing passion of visiting of that area, that region of the world, because I've been passionate about yoga for a while. But in the past year, I got certified as a yoga instructor and have dove in a little deeper into the spiritual history of yoga and the ancient yoga roots, which a lot of them live in Asian countries. So I have this kind of dream of going there, traveling to a variety of different Asian countries, maybe teaching some yoga and just learning about the culture and getting closer to those roots. So it's not official planned yet, but I'm in my research stage of looking at Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and hope to do that probably end of next year, fall time
Mm,
2026.
I love that. My past executive assistant, who's been my friend for a long time, and lives in my community, I just caught up with her. Her family is from Vietnam, and a big group of them, they just got back on a 3-week trip. And she is one of those that always, no matter what, knows all the things, like the best of the best. If you want a connection, I'm happy to get you with her, and I'm so
That would be
excited for your
great.
upcoming trip. That's cool. Okay. Well, before we go, if someone wants to reach out to you specifically, like maybe they want to talk about your trip or they want to dig in and ask a question directly or engage your business to help them, what's the best direct way to do that?
You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. And from an email standpoint, probably the easiest way is to just email hello Daphne at storytellingwithdata.com. That goes directly to me and I respond very quickly. It's just a little easier for that than to try to remember how to spell Caitlin because fun fact, there are 14 different ways to spell Caitlin and no one can ever remember. So hello Daphne at storytellingwithdata.com. People jokingly, like kids in schools will call me Daphne. So I joke that it's my second name anyways. And yeah, I'd love to connect and share more resources or guide you to the resources that might be a best place to start for you.
Oh, that's so cool. Hey, it could be your stage name.
That's
You could
right.
bring that out and like, hey, it's my stage name or my professional life. I love
Yeah,
that. I
there you
love that.
go.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I think there's many things that People Forward Network can collaborate with you on across like all of our partners and the leaders that we serve, because all of us are working to make things more simple so that our people can take and do the things and that there's meaning to it. Like with what you're talking about with the stories, it really hits and it resonates and it's fun. So thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.
We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.